I've seen just about everything. Seen queens overthrow kings, and straights flushed away. I felt the sweat after every re-raise, and nearly buckled after bad beats. Seen rags lead to riches, and witnessed countless miracles on the river. So if you want to play, take a seat and show me something I haven't seen. We play at FullTiltPoker.com.
Diego Cordovez.
Adam Schoenfeld.
Welcome to The Scoop.
Welcome.
Brought to you by Full Tilt Poker. We had Jack McClelland on last week, legendary tournament director, and he has a lot of good stuff to talk about.
I got to hear more about tournament direction.
We're gonna, and here's part two. Here's part two.
But the penalties, like I say, it cost me a lot of sleepless nights, and I'd kill hands sometimes. And I can understand, because as a player, if you're don't have a big bankroll like maybe some of the kids do now with the internet and businesses and stuff, you know, you might have got in on your last satellite dollar or something, yeah. And it's not life or death; it's much more important to you.
That one hand could be the difference between how you live that whole year.
Or your life. It can be a life-changing thing. So I had the compassion for the players. So, you know, I tried to cut them as much slack as I could, but it finally got to where I just couldn't get a staff hardly to work. Nobody wanted to deal to them.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I couldn't blame them, because I didn't want to be around them either.
And there wasn't even the sense of an informal penalty, because now, of course, penalties are formalized, but the idea of telling a player, listen, why don't you just go outside and cool off for a while, or I don't want to have to kick you out. I mean, at least you had that in your arsenal.
Yeah, I've done that some. I had there was a big. I started doing the World Series in '84, and in '83, when Tom McAvoy won, he had a problem with one of his partners, Marty Siegel, that thought he had more of a, whatever the deal was.
Right.
So anyhow, Marty's kind of a volatile guy, so he'd threatened Tom a few times and this and that. So next year's tournament, naturally they're sitting right beside each other at the table. And I'm.
I think you did that as a practical joke, just to see what would happen.
Finally, I say, okay, guys, you got this door for 20 minutes, you got that door for 20 minutes. When you come back, I don't want to hear nothing, or you're both done.
Right.
That's
that was the...
When you started directing tournaments, the fields were much smaller, and you basically would know everyone. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, there was very little white meat, so to speak.
Right.
Probably in the mid-'80s, the average age of the poker player was about 50.
Right.
And then when they opened up Stud and Hold'em in California, it went down to 35. Mm-hmm. But then, as that kind of became old news, as we got up to the year 2000, it was creeping back up to 40, 45 again. And poker, as you know, is a very intimidating game, walking into the
back then, really intimidating.
But, some poor lady sits down and she wins the hand playing ace-5 or something. They say, boy, you're stupid. So she gets up and takes the hand.
Right.
And then the other people say, what are you doing? Are you nuts? Well, she's stupid. And then with the advent of the whole card cam and the World Poker Tour, and being able to sit in a bar or in your home, not even have the voice on and follow the action.
Right.
Plus the perfect storm of the internet coming along and the lottery with Chris Moneymaker, it just went crazy. So about a year later, the average age of the poker player is about 23.
Right.
So it's a whole new thing. I mean, I went for probably 20 years where I felt that I was respected as a tournament director, and the players, all knew that I was, always try to do the right thing and be fair. You got to make a decision 50 times a day, and somebody's not going to like the decision. Right. Mm-hmm. But if they know you're consistent and you're fair and you really try, that that they're going to go with you. And now all of a sudden I got people coming in. They're 22 and 23. Who's this guy? What's he know? They don't do it like this at the World Series.
Right.
And I'd try to calm them. I said, well, no, but this is like a real tournament. And then they'd look.
You don't want to tell them I was running the World Series before you were born, Sonny. You never have to resort to that.
Well, what normally happens is after I walk away from the table, somebody that's in our age bracket says, hey, kid, shut up. This guy knows more than you'll ever forget.
When Jack originally ran the World Series, he was twice the size he is now. You know this, Jack. I told you that I watched the tapes, and I didn't even realize it was you, because you're so svelte now. You used to have a mustache and beard.
Glasses.
You're like a new man.
In 1994, I weighed 330 pounds, and I was really sick of myself. And the typical poker player, you go eat. They mean all you can eat at a buffet means you're supposed to clean it out.
Right.
And, then you sit and play cards for 12 hours, and then you drink 12 Cokes, and then you go to bed or something. Right. So, it's not a very good lifestyle for most people. And it was funny that year because that was the 25th anniversary of the World Series, and Jack Binion was giving away the weight in silver to the winner.
Right.
So everybody knew it was either going to be like Tab or some 80-pound Asian, because Jack always got the best of it. Right. So now we come down to the last day, and Russ Hamilton, who was the eventual winner, he's getting on the scales on one side, and they had like 200 pounds of silver on the other side. So I stood on the other side to make it up. So they'd see that he weighed 330. And that same day we put Jack Keller in the Hall of Fame, and he weighed 300. Right. Mm-hmm. And I already had scheduled, this was probably one of my dumbest moves. This was a year everybody was making these huge weight bets. I'll bet you 20,000 I can lose this. No matter, you can lose any way you want to, but I'll bet you. I didn't bet anybody, so I went down and paid for my own surgery, 25,000, and I lost 60 pounds in 6 weeks, 90 pounds in 90 days, and 140 pounds in 9 months.
Whew. So you were the pioneer.
Yeah, that surgery was
I was
early.
the pioneer.
This is really,
94. Jack
this
Keller
spread through the poker world like gangbusters.
Jack Keller called me every day for a month to make sure I didn't die. Then he went to my doctor.
Right.
I had several conversations with Doyle Brunson and Howard Lederer and Chip and all the, Lyndon Johnson, everybody. Yeah. So and it was the smartest thing I ever did because I'd be gone.
Right.
I was 43. And if I played golf, they'd say, well, what was that noise? It was my knees cracking. Mm-hmm. And in fact, about 8 years ago, I was over in Russia doing a tournament in St. Petersburg, and I caught a virus in my main heart muscle. And I went for 8 months before they could figure it out, where it's just kind of you just drop dead. Mm-hmm. And I'd have been 100%.
At 300 pounds, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Well, you might have saved lives because poker has the highest rate of this gastric bypass of anywhere, and a lot of poker players have followed. And
well, it's because of the sedentary lifestyle. You're sitting, and then you're stressed.
But someone had to be the first one because there's the fear that this is this new, new medicine, and is it risky, and what can happen. So now they see that you've been around for 15 years with it. Yeah, gives people peace of mind at least.
Well, I went on diets. I must have went on 15 diets a year. And you go and you get the vitamin shots, and you go and you do this, and you lose 50 pounds, and you say, great. Right. And then you go off the diet, and 2 weeks later you put 60 pounds back on, which is terrible for your body.
You mentioned before, obviously, how things have grown, and the scale of the World Series is just incredible. But is the essence still the same, or the issue still the same from the standpoint of a player or tournament organizer or someone running it? What are the most notable differences or not, that you've seen?
Well, I think it's just the sheer numbers. When I ran the World Series for 15 years, and I got questioned about 10 years after that because somebody come along for 2 years and then they'd be gone. Somebody come along for 2 years, they'd be gone. Somebody come along for 2 years, they'd be gone. And then Jack Eiffel, who's now the tournament director, I think he's been there 3 or 4 years. Mm-hmm. But I know he's more than like a hands-on tournament director out there making decisions. He's more of an administrator for the whole thing, which you need at that, and he does a very good job. And I remember one year after they had all the problems with the missing of millions and chips and all this kind of stuff, and I'm in Aruba, and so I'm getting interviews from all over the world, and they're saying, would you go back and run a World Series? And I said, well, I'm happy at the Bellagio. And they said, yeah, but would you go back and run a World Series? I said, well, I'm very happy at Bellagio. They said, well, could you go back and run a World Series? I said, well, of course. I ran it for 15 years. Didn't have any problems, nothing major. Well, why do they have so many problems now?
Well, you've got Bellagio to run.
Right.
And that's kind of your way of saying, this is how I'd like things to be.
Right.
Now you're running a series coming up, and you were just saying you've got Rolexes for all of us. Every player who plays gets one, or just the winner?
Yeah, just a winner. we had to stop someplace.
No Rolex for me.
But and it's not just No Limit, but all sorts of events, which I like to see.
We're having a little bit of everything now, and I'm actually very fortunate because when I ran the tournaments for like the 20 years before I went to the Bellagio, I was always never had the freedom to do exactly what I wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
Like at Commerce, they wanted you to narrow the field down the first 3 hours so people get back out in the cash games.
Right, right. Notable for that.
Right, and every place was different.
Mm-hmm.
But when I went to the Bellagio, Doug Dalton, who had been friends, in fact, we started at Sahara together back in '76, and we'd worked tournaments off and on together, but he was more basically the cash game guy. And, the economy wasn't good, and he said, well, maybe we should try something at the Bellagio. And I said, okay, what can I do? He says, do whatever you want. It's your baby. So I sat down and I thought about what did I have most problems with over the years. And the thing that I had the most problems with over the years were probably the rebuy tournaments.
Mm-hmm.
Because, this one's not fair, that one's not fair, that he can make 10 buy-ins and I can only buy one.
Not to mention all the logistics.
This guy's
of it.
dumping off chips to this guy, this employee stealing. Just, everything imaginable. So I said, well, let's don't do rebuys, let's just give them double chips. And everybody was very pleased with that. And then, so finally after about 4 or 5 years, I went to double chips at the World Series. Mm-hmm. So I said, okay, well, let's give them triple chips.
Right.
And then the small tournament buying world went nuts, where you get
quintuple chips.
100,000 in chips for a $10 staff fee
Right.
somewhere down the street, and it was just, really just insane.
But at least the notion of having a better structure and eliminating the rebuy issue is
So what I did last summer was I went to all of my tournaments. You get a minimum of 10,000 in chips. And anything that's 3,000 or higher, you get 4 times chips. Mm-hmm. So like in the 3,000, you get 12,000. The 5,000, you get 20. The 25,000, you get 100,000 in chips. I mean, obviously, last April, you got 100,000 in chips. You got 8 days to play. So obviously, the best 2 players in the world would have to come down to them. Well, Phil Hellmuth lasted 8 minutes. And we got down to heads up. It was a 21-year, 3-month-old Yevgeny Timoshenko and Ran Azor, who was more of a casino player than a tournament player. So obviously makes all that,
Well, but you know what? But Timoshenko then won the Poker Stars.
No, he's very brilliant.
He may be card player of the year.
Very brilliant young
and he's
player.
leading the card player of the year. So I think you're vindicated on that.
Oh no, yeah, but I mean, it's just so funny, It's if you give us the most chips the most time, the best players are, we're going to get there.
Still 2 guys you didn't know.
Yeah.
Well, the great thing is, Bellagio really from that has expanded to where there's tournaments all year long, and people have been going to them and growing. So, one thing before you go, we need some comps. And then,
you better come get them quick because we got a new computer system, man.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
It's not like the old days; it was more casual.
Well, what happened was we really needed to get into the 21st century. And we always use the paper comps for the reason of personal service.
Right.
You get to know your players.
Right.
But naturally, there was some abuse on the players' part. They'd come and they'd play once a month and they'd want comps and this and that. And what was really the downside for us for it would be like, you might come in and play 60 hours a week, and you never asked for a comp.
Right.
Right.
And you're the person that deserved it.
Right.
Or you might come in one day when it's crazy busy and say, can I have a comp? And they say no. Well, you just never ask again.
Right. And
you go someplace else. So now everybody will be, getting comps for when they play. Like if you play in a tournament, if like 10% of whatever the entry fee is, you get a comp for that. So like if you play in a $15,000 tournament, you get a $30 comp. A $40 comp.
The whole world is changing.
They're tracking us.
They're changing.
Yeah, but Big Brother wants to know everything.
Yeah.
We're run by the accountants.
Well, it's been a pleasure having you. We appreciate you coming in.
Thanks, Jack.
Okay.
And we look forward to seeing you down at the Bellagio tournaments if we're invited or if we're allowed in.
You're invited. Come on down and we'll have dinner. We'll buy you dinner.
Or we'll see you playing at the World Series or elsewhere too.
Yep. Hopefully I'll be able to get a chance to play a couple events next year.
Thanks a lot, Jack. Thanks for joining us on The Scoop, brought to you by Full Tilt Poker. Write to us at The Scoop at cardplayer.com.
I see you. Your eyes. Your hands. Your chips. Everything. So I don't need to see your cards. We play at FullTiltPoker.com.